Everybody, welcome back. Stephen here, Northwest Small Batch Brewing. And welcome back to a very short brew talk. It is, as I film this, well over 100-degree days here where I live. It's very hot. I don't have air conditioning. So I'm filming this very early in the morning before the house gets even hotter. And so I'm going to keep it short because it's just too warm to do a longer video. So that being said, I want to talk real quickly about recipes. Now I did a video, probably one of my first few videos on this channel years ago. Don't go look at it. It's terrible. The editing's terrible. Yeah, it was really bad. It's probably super long. Anyway, I kind of want to update it and give you guys a quick update because of some things I've been seeing, and I think this might help some people with their brewing. So I'll start off by saying if you haven't been brewing for a while and you're not comfortable with trying to figure out how to make your own recipes, you're probably going out to books, brewing books that have recipes. Maybe you're looking online and finding recipes, magazines that have recipes or whatever, right? Even a friend. It doesn't matter where you get it from, right? There's a problem with it, and I'm going to get to that here. But that's the first thing. You need a recipe. So you find a recipe. I would go on the record here and say that if you're going to get a recipe that you're going to use, either it needs to be from somebody you know that's a pretty good brewer that you trust, or get it from maybe a book that someone published. Those are usually pretty solid. And then the third place would be a lot of times, at least with the software I use, Brewer's Friend, you can sort recipes by style and by award-winning. A person cannot say that they have an award-winning beer unless they provide proof of it. And that means that they just won a beer competition, which doesn't always mean a whole lot. Sometimes those awards are kind of... I question some of the judges sometimes on those things. But, I mean, it's something you can go by so you know that hopefully whatever style it is met, you know, the guidelines of a judge that should have gone through some training and knows what to look for. All right, those are good sources for recipes. However, it gets a little bit more complicated. You can't just take a recipe and make it as is written, kind of like a cookbook, right? If you're making a recipe, you can't just sit down and make that recipe, right? Or, I mean, you can make that recipe, but with brewing, you can't do that. I've been thinking about this for a while. Brewing is a lot like baking bread, believe it or not. The process is very similar as far as the, you know, science behind it all. And bread is the same way. You kind of have to be able to feel when you need to make adjustments to your dough. Well, it's the same thing with brewing. So the recipes, always keep in mind that you don't know what brewing system, how they brew their recipe, whoever wrote that recipe. You don't know how they did it. You don't know all the intricacies and little things they did during the brewing process. And so you're taking a recipe, you can't just throw it at your brewing system and expect to get the same results, because you're not gonna, right? You're not gonna hit your numbers, you're gonna be frustrated. So first thing you need to do with any recipe you get is adapt it. Adapt it to your brewing system and your brewing style. The easiest way is if you use a brewing software, you can usually have a profile selected. I go back to Brewer's Friend because that's what I use, but like you can select a lot of different brewing systems within Brewer's Friend, and it will kind of auto help you dial that in. You know, if you have a grain father, you can select grain father. Whatever system you use, you can select that. The reason that's important is because when you plug in that recipe into there with your system, you're going to find the numbers are going to be different. It's not going to be the same. And so you're going to need to adjust some of the grain. You're going to need to adjust the hops. You need to adjust hops anyway, because by the time you get your hops, the alpha acid doesn't usually match what you wanted in the recipe. And to hit the right IBUs, you're going to need to add or subtract some hops from your recipe every time you make it. Anyway, plug all that in, and then you can play with it until you get the numbers that you want. And now you can make that recipe because it sort of matches. So same thing, if you get a beer kit from like a homebrew store or wherever, It's the same problem. You cannot go by this printout. They say, here's the step-by-step and directions, right? Here's what you should get for a gravity number. It's never going to match because their system that they brewed on doesn't match what you're brewing on. Always take their recipe, put it into your software to set the recipe to work with your system. I could talk briefly, I guess, about making your own recipes. You really need to have at least a general feel for grain. Make a lot of smash beers so that you get a feel for what different grains taste like. You know, different base malts than different, you know, crystal malts, and then all the adjunct malts and stuff. And you also need to get a pretty decent feel for the hops. Like, bittering hops are not as big a deal, but flavor hops, you definitely need to know. I mean, there are guides out there that tell you that different hops and what they taste or smell like, but it helps to have a good foundation to make your own recipe. And then you start usually by going out and finding out what's the official guidelines for making that style of beer that you're making. Not every style of beer is going to have a guideline, but most of them do. Take a look at the BJCP guidelines, and they will tell you, you look up your beer style, and it will tell you the range of gravity for beginning and ending gravity. It'll give you ABV ranges, and it'll even sometimes give you style guidelines and potentially, you know, commercial made beers that match the style. So that's where you would start, you know, with okay, these are the numbers I need to hit, or I need to be in this range. If you don't find your beer style in the BJCP guidelines, you can also look at the Brewers Association guidelines. I don't know why they're different or why they felt like they were needing to come up with something different than the official ones that the judges use, but there is a separate set of guidelines. It's mostly the same styles, but I have found that they have a wider selection of styles. So if you're making something that's not, you know, super traditional, you might want to look at those guidelines. At least it gives you, you know, something to go by when you're making your recipe. Then from there, there is Brewing Great Beers. It's a book that has all kinds of information on specific styles of beers. For some reason, it does not have Belgian beers, but it has pretty much everything else. And it gives you suggestions on what grains to use, at what percentages. And then it basically comes down to, once you have a kind of general idea of what you want, you have to start tweaking it. Like for me, I love Munich malt. So a lot of times if I see that some of the recipes call for Munich, I'm going to use Munich. Doesn't mean I have to, but I know what malts that I prefer. I know what kind of hops I prefer. And so I'll oftentimes swing that direction when I'm looking at recipes. You also look at clone recipes and see what they're doing for that particular style. So anyway, that's my jumping off point. And the main point of this video is put your recipe, whatever recipe you get from whatever, you know, if it's a pre-made recipe you bought somewhere, or if you're using one from online and creating your own, put it through your software for your brewing system. Otherwise, your numbers are not going to match what they say that they got. All right, well, I hope that helps, and I'll be back in another week for another video. And until then, keep on brewing.